speaker is on the pathways for effective coaching. He also is doing understanding your communication style. Purpose of this is the same, is to learn about your communication style and its impact on your profession and personal relationships. And it sounds like he has a kindred spirit with Natalia reading his intro here. Chad has been in management roles for over 10 years. He prefers getting right to the point because he usually doesn't have a lot of time or patience. He didn't have any problems fitting in when he first started working in New York City a few years ago. While being direct has its advantages, Chad is on a quest to better understand himself and grow as a person. It's one of the reasons he joined Toastmasters, and he is very grateful to all the members and guests who have created such a warm and welcoming environment. Doing the speech, Finding Yourself is about what you lose and gain along the way. Please welcome Chad Horenfeldt.
When I was growing up, there was this really disgruntled man on my street. He had these like Hulk-like hands, and he had this booming voice. And even if people were on his grass, like even if their shadows were on his grass, he'd come running out and he'd say, "Get off my lawn!" If kids saw him, they'd run to the other side of the street. And one day, it was a story that we just all knew the story. He had this black lab, and he wanted this lab to sit down. So he turns to the dog, and he says, "Sit!" The dog sat. His family sat. Half the neighborhood sat down. That man was my father. Fellow members and honored guests, my dad was a perfect example of where a direct communicator was. He had two rules. His first rule was he was never wrong. Does anyone know what the second rule is?
See rule number one.
That's right. If he's wrong, refer back to rule number one. He was impatient. He was demanding. He wanted everything just the right way. And if they didn't go that way, you'd really hear about it. Let me just say that growing up in this environment was very difficult. My father also rarely showed any of his feelings, except for rage. He was kind of like the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz, someone who never really found his heart. And over time, when I was growing up, it was challenging for me because I was always told to be silent. I was always told that I was wrong. And when I had these opinions, he would just say, "Well, that's just not important." And over time, I began to resent my father. And I was just had enough of his bluntness and his always desire to be right. And this rift grew between us. What I didn't realize at the time is that I had picked up a lot of those direct communication skills that my father had. I was competitive, I was independent, and I also wanted my ideas to be the ones that were accepted. Now, I've been on this journey for many years, and I've made many mistakes over time trying to learn how to be a better communicator. So this is my journey on how I learned those different communication styles. I became a better communicator and a better person. When I went off to university, I learned this new communication style. It was this analytical approach. And I really loved when I was in university is I had these intellectual debates, and I loved to prove people that they were wrong. And I remember this one lecture that I was in, and I remember raising my hand, and the professor called on me. And like an idiot, I said to him, "Sir, you just contradicted yourself." He stopped, and he paused and he looked over at me, and I saw these daggers in his eyes. And he said, "I most certainly did not." I didn't do very well in that class. I knew that I really needed to tone down that analytical side. After university, I had this really great opportunity. I was able to run this charity. And I was so excited. I was like, "Oh, this is going to be my first manager role, get to hire people." Now, I didn't get a lot of guidance being a manager, and this direct communication style that I learned, that took over. And the person I hired, she quit soon after. And I didn't hold any grudges against her. I mean, I was being a jerk. It wasn't, I would say, until my first child was born that it was a turning point for me. I really started to change. Not too long after our child was growing up, we realized that something was different, something was off. My child was just not socializing with the other kids like they should be. My child was disruptive, and unfortunately he was a little violent at times. So we had him evaluated, and he was diagnosed with ADHD and some really severe anxiety disorders. After we had him diagnosed, I took some time to reflect, and I knew that the parental style that I was using, it just can't be something that I can continue to do. I was very firm with him, and I was very commanding with him, and I expected perfection, very much like my father did. I was kind of like the Tywin Lannister father figure in Game of Thrones. And I knew that if I kept directing him and I kept raising my voice, it was only going to push him away. And this is when I started to change. I didn't want to wake up and have someone pointing a crossbow at me. If you guys remember Game of Thrones. But more importantly, I didn't want my son resenting me like I resented my father. So I started to change my approach, and first and foremost, I wanted my kids, and especially my son, to realize that I really, really cared for him. I started to share my own feelings with him and let him know how I was feeling. And I became more empathetic in terms of listening to what he wanted and kind of where he was coming from. I stopped reacting to his behavior and really tried to understand what was going through his head and would come down at his level. And we even started this new ritual in our family where we started to hug each other right in the beginning. So when we get up in the morning, we'd hug each other. When I come home from work, we'd hug each other. And I would say that this just changed the dynamic. This type of communication style is a supportive type of communication style. And it's something that not only changed myself within my family as a parent, but it really changed how I interacted with other people. It's something where I was becoming more empathetic. I was listening to people's ideas more and really trying to take those into account. What I would say is this idea of asking and not telling people. And overall, it really changed myself as a leader, as a parent, as a husband, and as a person. That's not all. I started to take into account that I should reflect on my relationship with my father. And so I realized that he really did care for me. He just communicated that in a different way. I put the past aside and I really focused on the present. And this resulted in my dad and I having a much better relationship. Unfortunately, when my dad passed away last year, it was super difficult for me. It was really, really hard. That said, we had talked a lot. There was really no regrets. There was nothing that was left unsaid. We both knew how much we cared for each other, how much we loved each other. And so I'd say that of everything in this journey that I'm on, that was by far the biggest turning point for me and the biggest accomplishment for me. And this journey is something that's continuing to evolve. It's something that I want to continue to learn and be a better communicator. But it's something that I really enjoy, and it's something that I hope to share more with you. So thank you.